Are you the type of person who loves drawing plants and flowers but is afraid of using colored pencils? Or are you simply dissatisfied with the drawings you've made with this medium? My name is Matheus Macedo, I am specialized in realistic drawings, and in this video I want to share some tips on how to draw realistic leaves using colored pencils. Without further ado, let's get right into it. The first step to drawing a leaf with great competence is choosing the right colors. There is a wide variety of greens you can use. Some shades are warmer while others are cooler. So when observing a reference, ask yourself, are the tones warmer or cooler? In this first leaf I'm drawing, notice that the tones are closer to yellow. Therefore, the greens I choose will follow that direction. To make this type of selection, you naturally need a variety of colored pencils. You don't have to buy a full set of polychromos, for example, which is very expensive. Instead, you can buy individual pencils over time and gradually expand your color palette. This also depends on the type of drawings you enjoy making. If you like drawing plants or flowers, having more green tones is useful. On the other hand, if you prefer drawing portraits, you'll need a different range of colors. In summary, I created this first leaf using 3 different shades of green, along with brown, black, white, and gray. Speaking of black and white, let's talk about the second aspect to consider when drawing a leaf, its volume. When I talk about volume, I'm essentially referring to the contrast between light and shadow values. I mentioned black and white, but these colors should not be used in isolation. In fact, I only use them to intensify other colors, such as green. That's why I also use some darker and lighter shades of green. This helps achieve more realistic colors. I like to establish light and shadow values from the very first layers of pencil. This gives my drawing a clear direction. Once I define these values in the first layers, I focus on reinforcing them in the following layers. With this aspect settled, I can then turn my attention to fine-tuning the color balance. And here's a tip. If you want to better visualize light and shadow values, use an image editor to create a black and white copy of a reference. If you're a beginner and your eye isn't well trained yet, you might confuse color differences with light and shadow differences. You may notice that even though I start with shadows, I don't begin with the darkest colors. My process is as follows. First, I use intermediate colors. Then I gradually darken the drawing. And finally, I go in the opposite direction and add the lighter tones. Why do I do this? Well, simply because I find it easier to start with softer tones and work toward the extremes at the end. I probably feel more secure with this approach since it's easier to adjust intermediate tones as I build up more layers. The lighter areas of the leaf can be left with fewer layers of pigment. That's what I did with this first leaf. I left the vein areas with less pigment and only covered them with color at the end. Speaking of final layers, this is when I use the lighter tones. In this leaf, for example, after using a lighter green, I applied gray. That's because the green tone was too intense and the gray helped reduce the saturation. White can also serve this purpose. You might be wondering why I didn't use an eraser to create the veins. Well, it's possible to do that with an eraser, but I don't find it the easiest method. Erasing colored pencil is tricky, especially when dealing with small details. That's why I prefer using lighter colors like a white pencil. Speaking of white, I used it in this other leaf to create details like this. In reality, white is one of the most useful colors you can have. Just like black, it's very versatile but should be used with caution. It's rare to find situations where black and white appear in their purest form. A common mistake among beginners is thinking that shadows are made only with black and highlights only with white. In the same drawing, you might have several similar leaves, but they are not necessarily identical. There can be variations in tone and color. In this drawing, for example, notice how each leaf is different, even though they all belong to the same rows. I used the same colors for all 3 leaves, but I varied the amount of each color. To achieve a good result in a drawing like this, it's important to work patiently. Colored pencils require time and patience from the artist, especially if you want a more realistic finish. This rows is the final exercise of a course I created on how to draw flowers with colored pencils. In this course, I present 4 exercises at different levels of difficulty and guide you step by step on how to complete each one in a detailed way. If you're interested, the link to this course is in the description. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to leave a like. And if you don't want to miss new content like this, subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much for watching and see you next time.